Boom! Red lights exploded across Fort Bragg's VR combat bay as Sarah Thompson's palm slammed onto the biometric scanner. Alarms screamed. Unauthorized access detected flashed on every screen before suddenly switching to Ghost Shepherd, Phoenix Wing Reactivated. Specialist Tyler Harrison's laughter died in his throat. The 33-year-old woman in civilian clothes, dark jeans, gray hoodie, worn canvas bag, stood frozen as classified protocols nobody had seen for 3 years cascaded across the monitors. Her small frame trembled, not from fear, but from muscle memory as the system recognized combat patterns embedded in her DNA. "That's impossible," whispered Lieutenant Colonel Rivera from the control booth, watching security clearances he'd never seen before flash across his screen. Phoenix Wing operators were all declared KIA in Syria. Sarah's blue eyes never left the display. Her hand moved unconsciously to touch something hidden beneath her hoodie, a dog tag that hadn't seen daylight in 3 years. The simulation bay had become a tomb of silence, broken only by the hum of machines recognizing a ghost who was supposed to be dead. If you believe skilled veterans deserve respect regardless of appearance, type respect in the comments. This story gets deeper. The facility was bustling with weekend activity. Active duty personnel, police officers, and civilian enthusiasts, all using the advanced virtual reality combat training systems. The intake officer, Corporal Jennifer Adams, had processed Sarah's paperwork without a second glance. "Have you used VR tactical simulation before?" she asked routinely. Sarah smiled gently. "Not this specific system." Behind her in line, a group of young soldiers burst into quiet laughter. Private Danny Foster, barely 22, nudged his buddy. $20 says she can't even figure out how to put the headset on properly." Sarah didn't react, just stood patiently holding a pair of worn tactical gloves, silent as dawn mist. Her posture was relaxed, but there was something in the way she carried herself, a subtle confidence that spoke of experiences far removed from this recreational setting. The soldiers continued their mockery, their voices carrying across the registration area. "Look at those hands," Foster pointed discreetly. "Bet she's never held anything heavier than a coffee cup." Another soldier, Sergeant Kevin Murphy, joined the conversation. "Probably saw some action movie and thought it looked fun. These civilians have no idea what real combat simulation involves." A third voice chimed in from Specialist Harrison. "I give her 5 minutes before she's asking for help with the basic controls." Sarah waited patiently, her breathing controlled and measured. Something about her stillness made the air feel different, but the young soldiers were too caught up in their assumptions to notice. She observed everything automatically: the layout of the simulation bay, the equipment configurations, the personnel. It was like breathing, this constant tactical awareness. The range supervisor, Master Sergeant Carlos Rivera, a gruff man with 25 years of service, glanced at her paperwork. "Says here you want to try the advanced urban warfare simulation. That's pretty intense stuff, ma'am. Maybe start with something simpler? We've got a nice civilian marksmanship program that might be more appropriate." "I'll be fine," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying a certainty that Rivera almost missed. There was something in her tone, not arrogance, but a calm assurance that made him look at her twice. Rivera shrugged. "Your money. Just don't blame us when the simulation overwhelms you. And please, for everyone's safety, follow all instructions exactly as given." More laughter echoed through the facility. Sarah's fingers traced the edge of her tactical gloves, worn leather that had been broken in through years of use. The gloves showed specific wear patterns, fingertip calluses, palm reinforcement, and small scars that spoke of real-world application. Hidden beneath her hoodie, a dog tag rested against her chest. Custom-made titanium, it bore a simple inscription: "Bring them home whole." The tag had been a gift from her commanding officer after her first successful extraction mission 8 years ago. She'd worn it through every operation since, a reminder of what mattered most. But what Harrison and the others didn't know was that this civilian had commanded Phoenix Wing, one of the most elite special operations units in recent military history. Sarah Thompson had been declared KIA 3 years ago after a classified mission in Syria went wrong. Officially, she didn't exist, Unofficially, she was still protecting people, just in different ways. The truth was buried in classified files that carried security clearances these young soldiers would never see. Sarah had been the sole survivor of Operation Desert Shield, a hostage rescue mission that saved 14 civilians but cost her entire team their lives. She'd spent 3 days fighting her way through enemy territory, carrying 2 wounded hostages to safety, while the world believed everyone was dead. When Sarah's turn came, she didn't ask for help with the equipment like everyone expected. Instead, she walked directly to the biometric scanner, a sophisticated piece of military hardware that managed user profiles, threat assessments, and training parameters. Without hesitation, she placed her palm on the sensor. The system froze. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, screens across the facility began flashing red. Warning lights activated. The main display showed biosignature processing. Clearance level classified. A staff member stepped back, his face draining of color. That's impossible. This system only recognizes active military personnel with special operations clearances. Foster looked confused. Maybe it's malfunctioning. But Master Sergeant Rivera was staring at his computer terminal, his hands beginning to shake. The system was accessing files he'd never seen before, displaying information that shouldn't exist. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "this equipment, it's reading biometric data I don't have clearance to view." The facility's commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Rivera, Carlos's brother, came running from the observation deck when alarms began sounding in his office. He was a man who had overseen special operations training for 15 years, who had seen the most classified personnel files in the military. When he saw the screen displaying Ghost Shepherd Phoenix Wing status reactivated, his face went completely pale. "You," he whispered, looking at Sarah with wide eyes. "You're supposed to be dead." People began gathering around, drawn by the commotion and the flashing red lights. The atmosphere shifted like a storm front moving in, heavy with tension and sudden realization that something extraordinary was happening. Harrison stepped forward, confusion replacing his earlier mockery. "Sir, what's going on? She's just a civilian who wanted to try the simulation." Lieutenant Colonel Rivera checked his secure tablet, his security clearance allowing him access to fragments of information that made his blood run cold. Phoenix Wing was an extraction unit that operated in the most dangerous zones in Syria. They specialized in missions where conventional forces had a 90% casualty rate. The computer continued updating, displaying data that shouldn't have been accessible. Last active, 2021. Mission status, classified. Survival rate for protected personnel, 100%. Operator. Status, presumed KIA. Sarah looked at the screen with those same calm eyes, showing no surprise at the system's response. Sometimes systems remember what people try to forget. A senior instructor, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, approached cautiously. She'd been in the service for 18 years, had trained special operations personnel, and understood what those classifications meant. Ghost Shepherd was a designation for solo deep penetration specialists, operators who could complete missions alone that would normally require a full platoon. The system kept processing, revealing more classified information. Confirmed extractions, 47 personnel, hostile territory operations, 23, 0 friendly casualties under command. Foster, who had been joking about $20 bets, now stood frozen. "Ma'am, we didn't know." Sarah turned to him, her voice gentle but carrying an authority that made everyone listen. "You weren't supposed to know." That was the point. The best operations are the ones that never officially happened. The simulation bay had filled with an odd tension. Other users had stopped their training, drawn by the flashing lights and growing crowd. Everyone seemed to sense they were witnessing something that would change how they viewed the world. Lieutenant Colonel Rivera pulled up more files on his secure tablet. His clearance was high enough to access operational summaries, though the details remained classified. It says here Phoenix Wing conducted hostage extractions in zones where satellite communication was impossible. How do you coordinate rescue operations when you can't even call for backup? You learn to work with what you have. Sarah replied simply. And you learn that sometimes the most important missions are the ones where nobody gets to come home as a hero. The system beeped again, offering options that hadn't been available moments before. Tactical protocols available. Authorize advanced training scenarios. Warning, classified content. Master Sergeant Rivera looked at the screen, then at Sarah, confusion and respect warring in his expression. Ma'am, these protocols, they're above my clearance level. I can't even see what they contain. The system is offering training scenarios I've never encountered in 25 years of service. Rivera stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Those protocols were developed for situations where conventional military tactics had failed completely. They're designed for operators who work alone in environments where backup isn't coming, where extraction isn't guaranteed, and where success is measured in lives saved, not territory gained. Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, where the dog tag rested hidden beneath her hoodie. The movement was subtle, but Lieutenant Colonel Rivera caught it, a gesture so familiar among special operations personnel that it was unmistakable. That tag, he said quietly. It's not standard issue, is it? For the first time, Sarah's composed expression flickered slightly. It was a gift. From your commanding officer? From my team. Her voice carried a weight that made the entire room feel the gravity of unspoken loss. After our first successful mission. Before... She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. Before they died. Before she became the sole survivor. Before she disappeared from all official records. Santos approached carefully, recognizing the signs of someone carrying invisible wounds. The mission that ended Phoenix Wing, what happened? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant, as if seeing ghosts that only she could perceive. We were sent to extract a diplomat's family from Aleppo, 3 adults, 2 children. Intelligence said we had a 6-hour window before enemy forces discovered their location. Her voice became quieter, more controlled. Intelligence was wrong. It was a trap. They knew we were coming. The room held its breath. I ordered my team to establish overwatch positions while I went in alone to assess the situation. When I reached the family, I realized the entire building was wired to explode. I had maybe 10 minutes to get 5 people out of a kill zone, with enemy forces surrounding the entire block. Lieutenant Colonel Rivera leaned forward. What did you do? I called my team on comms and told them to fall back to the extraction point. Told them I was bringing the family out through the north corridor and to be ready for immediate exfiltration. She paused, her breathing carefully measured. But I didn't go north. I went south, deeper into enemy territory, making as much noise as possible. You led them away from your team, Santos realized. The family was my responsibility. My team was my responsibility. I couldn't save both if we stayed together. Sarah's eyes grew distant. I fought my way through 3 city blocks, carrying a wounded diplomat and covering 4 other people. By the time we reached the secondary extraction point, my team had been evacuated safely. But you were left behind, Foster said, understanding dawning on his face. I was declared KIA along with the family when the building exploded 20 minutes after we escaped. Officially, Phoenix Wing's final mission was a total loss. Unofficially, she touched her chest again, where the dog tag rested. Sometimes the greatest success looks like failure in the reports. The system suddenly chimed with an alert that made Lieutenant Colonel Rivera's secure tablet light up with notifications. Incoming priority message from JSOC, he read aloud, his voice tense. All Phoenix Wing personnel previously listed as KIA are to be considered for immediate reactivation pending verification. He looked at Sarah with new understanding. They've been looking for you. I know, she said simply. I've been avoiding them. Harrison stepped forward, his earlier mockery completely replaced by awe and confusion. Ma'am, why? If you're this elite operator, why hide? Why not return to service? Sarah removed her tactical gloves slowly, revealing hands that told their own story. Calloused in specific patterns from years of weapons handling, small scars that spoke of close-quarters combat, and a faded tattoo on her wrist. Phoenix Wing, bring them home. Because, she said quietly, some people aren't meant to be heroes in the light. Some people are meant to be guardians in the shadows. She looked around the room at the faces watching her. Young soldiers who had laughed at her appearance, seasoned instructors who were reassessing everything they thought they knew about strength and service. For 3 years, I've been working as a civilian contractor, search and rescue operations, disaster relief, private security for humanitarian missions. No medals, no recognition, no official records. Just making sure people get home safely. Lieutenant Colonel Rivera's tablet chimed again. "Ma'am, I'm authorized to offer you immediate reinstatement at your previous rank. Full benefits, backdated to your presumed death date, and assignment to any unit of your choosing." Sarah smiled sadly. "I appreciate that, Colonel, but I didn't come here to rejoin the military." "Then why did you come?" Santos asked. Sarah reached into her canvas messenger bag and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, was her dog tag, the one inscribed, "Bring them home whole." She held it up so everyone could see. "I came to get this back," she said. "I've been keeping it in a safety deposit box for 3 years, afraid that wearing it would compromise my cover. But I realized something recently." She fastened the chain around her neck, the tag settling against her chest where it belonged. "I realized that hiding who you are doesn't protect anyone. It just makes you smaller." The room watched in absolute silence as she made this simple gesture, putting on a piece of metal that represented everything she had sacrificed, everything she had lost, and everything she continued to fight for. "I'm not Ghost Shepherd anymore," she continued. "I'm not Phoenix Wing. I'm just Sarah Thompson, and I help people when they need help. That's enough." Foster stepped forward, his voice breaking slightly. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. We all do. We judged you based on appearances, and that was wrong." Sarah looked at him with kind eyes. "You judged me based on what you could see. That's human nature. The lesson isn't to stop making judgments. It's to remember that the most important things about a person are usually invisible." Lieutenant Colonel Rivera set down his tablet and stepped forward. "Sarah Thompson," he said formally, "on behalf of the United States Army and Fort Bragg, I want to thank you for your service. Both your official service to Phoenix Wing and your continued unofficial service to people in need." He gestured to the simulation bay around them. "Would you do us the honor of demonstrating the training protocols the system offered? Not as Ghost Shepherd, but as Sarah Thompson, teaching us what real service looks like?" Sarah considered this for a moment, then shook her head gently. "I think the real lesson has already been taught." She looked around the room at the faces watching her. Young soldiers who would remember this moment for the rest of their careers, instructors who would tell this story to future trainees, support staff who had witnessed something that redefined their understanding of heroism. The lesson is this: respect isn't earned through rank or recognition. It's earned through choices to help when no one is watching, to sacrifice without expecting reward, to carry burdens so others don't have to. Harrison raised his hand tentatively. "Ma'am, how do we become better soldiers after knowing this?" "By remembering that the person next to you might be carrying invisible weights," Sarah replied. "By understanding that strength isn't always loud, courage isn't always obvious, and the most important battles are often fought by people whose names will never be in any history book." She began walking toward the exit, then paused and turned back. "And by remembering that every person you meet deserves the same respect you'd give to someone wearing a chest full of medals, because you never know who has earned them but chose not to wear them." Foster called out, "Ma'am, will we see you again?" Sarah smiled. "Probably not. But if you're ever in a situation where someone needs help, and you help them without asking questions or expecting thanks, then I'll be there in spirit." 3 weeks later, the Fort Bragg training facility added a new section to their orientation program. Every new soldier, every visiting civilian, every instructor received a briefing that began with a simple statement: respect every person who walks through these doors, because you never know what battles they've already won. Harrison transferred to search and rescue operations, inspired by the idea that saving lives was more important than any glory military service could offer. Foster began volunteering with veteran support organizations, understanding finally that service continues long after uniforms are removed. Master Sergeant Rivera kept a note on his desk that Sarah had left behind. True strength is protecting others without needing them to know you're the one doing the protecting. Lieutenant Colonel Rivera submitted a classified report recommending that the Phoenix Wing protocols be preserved and that any former Special Operations personnel be treated with the highest respect, regardless of their current status. The response he received was simple. Understood. There are others we're watching. Santos retired 6 months later, but not before adding a new principle to the training manual. Remember that the most dangerous person in the room is often the quietest one, not because they're hiding something dark, but because they've already walked through enough darkness for several lifetimes. The simulation system kept Sarah's biometric signature active, though she never returned. Sometimes, late at night, Santos would wonder where she was, what she was doing. She hoped Sarah had found some peace, some way to live with the weight of being a guardian in the shadows. But in her heart, she knew that people like Sarah Thompson don't retire from protecting others. They just find new ways to stand between the innocent and the harm that threatens them. They become the watchers who protect from places where recognition never reaches, where gratitude never arrives, but where it matters most. The legend of Ghost Shepherd lived on, not in official records, but in the hearts of those who understood that true heroism doesn't need recognition. It just needs to exist, quietly and constantly, in the spaces between the light and the darkness. Thank you for typing respect. Subscribe for more stories of dignity. Support our mission through Buy Me a Coffee, link in the first pinned comment. Until next time, honor never fades.